The winter air bit through my threadbare coat as I huddled closer to my children, trying to shield them from the wind that howled through the massive stone courtyard. Around us, dozens of pack members gathered in their finest clothes. Thick furs, leather lined with wool, boots that actually fit. I could smell the richness of their lives. Expensive oils in their hair, the scent of full bellies, the confidence that came with belonging somewhere safe. My daughter Emma, pressed against my left side, her small body trembling despite the thin blanket I'd wrapped around her shoulders. On my right, my son Thomas clutched my hand so tightly I could feel his pulse racing through his fingertips. They were scared. Of course they were scared. This wasn't our world, this gathering of the powerful and privileged. We were only here because the law demanded it. Every pack member, no matter how lowly, had to attend the Alpha King's annual address. I kept my eyes down, my pale blonde hair falling forward to hide my face. Invisibility had become my survival strategy over the past 3 years. Ever since my mate had rejected me publicly, claiming I was too weak to bear his mark, too broken to stand beside him. The pack had agreed. An Omega with 2 small children and no protection was nothing but a burden. They'd given me the smallest cottage on the edge of territory, the one with gaps in the walls and a roof that leaked when it rained, just enough to say they'd fulfilled their obligation to care for pack members. Just enough to keep their conscience clear while they forgot I existed. "Mama, I'm cold," Emma whispered, her breath forming small clouds in the freezing air. "I know, sweetheart. Just a little longer." I pulled her closer. Though I had no warmth to offer, my own body shook with cold. My feet numb inside boots held together with twine. The crowd shifted suddenly, a ripple of movement and hushed whispers spreading through the courtyard. I felt it before I saw it, that overwhelming pressure in the air that came with true power. The Alpha King had arrived. I'd never seen him before. Our pack was small, insignificant, tucked away in the northern territories where snow fell 8 months of the year, and resources were scarce. The king rarely visited places like this. But this year, something had changed. Rumors spoke of unrest in the southern territories, of challenges to his authority, of a need to remind even the smallest packs that his reach extended everywhere. The pressure intensified, making it hard to breathe. Beside me, Thomas whimpered softly. I wanted to cover his mouth, to make us even smaller, even less noticeable. Alphas didn't like weakness displayed so openly, and an Omega who couldn't even keep her children quiet during an important ceremony? That was just asking for trouble. "Shh, baby. Be brave," I whispered against his hair, though my own heart hammered against my ribs. The crowd parted like water, creating a clear path from the main hall to the raised platform where our pack's Alpha stood waiting. And then I saw him. The Alpha King was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd expected someone ancient, weathered by centuries of rule. Instead, he looked barely past 30, though I knew he must be far older, tall, powerfully built, with dark hair that fell just past his shoulders and eyes so pale they seemed to glow silver in the dim winter light. He wore simple clothing, no furs, no elaborate displays of wealth, just black, well-fitted garments that somehow made him more intimidating than any amount of decoration could have. But it was his face that caught me, not handsome in any conventional way. Too sharp, too harsh, the features of someone who'd seen too much darkness. Yet there was something magnetic about him, something that made it impossible to look away, even as every instinct screamed to lower my eyes, to submit, to disappear. He moved with fluid grace across the courtyard, his boots silent on the frozen ground. The pack members bowed as he passed, a wave of submission that followed in his wake. I bowed too, pulling my children down with me, praying we'd remain invisible in the sea of bodies. The ceremony began with traditional words I'd heard every year since childhood. Our pack Alpha spoke of loyalty, of strength, of the honor of serving the king. The words washed over me, meaningless. I was too focused on keeping my children still, on ignoring the gnawing hunger in my belly, on the painful throbbing in my feet where frostbite had started to set in during the long walk here. Then the Alpha King spoke, and the world seemed to still. His voice was deep, resonant, carrying easily across the courtyard without him needing to raise it. He spoke of unity, of protecting pack members, of the responsibility that came with power. Standard political rhetoric. I let my mind drift, thinking about the herbs I'd gathered yesterday, wondering if I could trade them for bread, calculating how much longer our meager supplies would last. And what of those who slipped through the cracks, The king's voice sharpened, pulling me back to attention. What of those we fail to protect? Our alpha shifted uncomfortably on the platform. Around me, pack members exchanged confused glances. The king descended from the platform, moving into the crowd. The pressure of his presence intensified with each step, making the air feel thick and heavy. People stumbled back, creating space around him, their submission instinctive and total. I can smell fear, he said quietly, though somehow everyone heard him. Not the healthy respect that comes from recognizing power, fear born of cold, of hunger, of abandonment. My heart stopped. No, he couldn't mean... His footsteps changed direction, moving with purpose now. The crowd parted faster, people scrambling to get out of his way. I pressed my children behind me, making myself as small as possible, but I knew. Somehow, I knew. He stopped directly in front of us. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. Behind me, Emma had started crying silently, her little body shaking against my back. Thomas had gone completely still, that terrible frozen stillness that came from pure terror. Slowly, against every instinct, I raised my eyes. The Alpha King stood less than 3 feet away. Those silver eyes locked on my face with an intensity that felt like physical touch. Up close, I could see the fine scars that marked his hands, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights, the tension in his jaw that suggested he was holding back enormous rage. But he wasn't looking at me with anger. The expression on his face was something far more complex, something that looked almost like recognition, though we'd never met. Something that looked almost like pain. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't pretend not to understand. 3 years, Your Majesty. 3 years, he repeated. And now the anger was there, simmering beneath the surface, but not directed at me. He turned to face our pack alpha, and the temperature in the courtyard seemed to drop another 10 degrees. 3 years you've left an Omega and her children to freeze and starve at the edge of your territory? Our alpha's face had gone pale. Your Majesty. She was rejected by her mate. According to pack law, the king interrupted, his voice soft and deadly, states that rejected Omegas fall under the protection of the alpha. That means proper housing, proper food, proper care. Or did you forget that particular law? The silence that followed was absolute. The king turned back to me, and his expression shifted again, becoming something almost gentle. He crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with my children. "Hello?" he said softly. "My name is Damon. What are yours?" Emma hiccuped, her tears still flowing. Thomas remained frozen. "It's okay," I whispered to them, though I had no idea if it was true. "Answer the king." Emma, my daughter managed. "Thomas," my son added, his voice barely audible. Damon smiled, and the transformation was startling. For just a moment, the harsh lines of his face softened, revealing someone who might have been kind, once, before whatever darkness had claimed him. "Those are strong names. Are you cold, Emma and Thomas?" They both nodded. "Would you like to be warm?" Another nod, more eager this time. Damon stood, his eyes meeting mine again. In them, I saw a question, an offer, and something else, something that made my breath catch in my throat. Then he turned to address the entire courtyard, his voice ringing with absolute authority. "Come here," he said, gesturing to me and my children. "All of you." I didn't move, couldn't move. My body had turned to stone, every muscle locked in place by a terror so profound, it overwhelmed even basic survival instinct. Around us, the crowd had gone deathly silent, hundreds of eyes burning into my back. The weight of their judgment, their shock, their curiosity pressed down on me like a physical force. "Mama?" Emma's small voice broke through my paralysis. The Alpha King, Damon, stood waiting, his hand still extended in invitation. Not a command, I realized with distant surprise, an invitation. As if I had a choice, as if someone like me could refuse someone like him. But there was something in his eyes, something that looked almost like understanding. As if he knew exactly how terrified I was and was giving me the space to decide anyway. My legs shook as I took the first step forward. Then another. Emma and Thomas clung to my coat, moving with me, their small feet stumbling over the frozen ground. The crowd parted around us like we carried some contagious disease, people practically falling over themselves to maintain distance. When we reached him, Damon removed his own cloak, a heavy thing lined with fur that probably cost more than I'd see in a lifetime, and wrapped it around all three of us. The warmth was immediate and overwhelming. Emma made a small sound of relief, burrowing deeper into the fabric. The scent that came with it was intoxicating. Pine and winter air, and something wild and masculine that made my head spin. "Better?" he asked quietly, looking down at my children. They nodded, their terror beginning to fade in the face of unexpected kindness. Damon's hand moved to my shoulder, and I flinched before I could stop myself. He froze, his expression darkening with something that looked like fury, though again, not directed at me. His fingers were gentle when they settled on my shoulder, barely any pressure at all. "No one will hurt you," he said, and the words carried the weight of absolute truth. "Not anymore." Then he turned back to the assembled pack, and his voice cut through the courtyard like a blade. "This gathering is concluded. Alpha Warren, you will accompany me inside, now." Our pack Alpha looked like he might be sick, but he followed without argument as Damon led us all toward the main hall. The warmth inside hit me like a wall, so intense after hours in the freezing courtyard that I actually swayed on my feet. Damon's hand tightened on my shoulder, steadying me. "Sit," he directed, pointing to chairs near the massive fireplace that dominated one wall. I sank into the nearest chair, my children immediately climbing into my lap despite being too big for it. They needed the contact, the reassurance that I was still there, still protecting them, even if I had no idea what was happening or what would happen next. Damon turned to one of the servants who'd appeared as if from nowhere. "Bring food. Warm soup, bread, nothing too heavy, and hot tea with honey." His eyes moved to my children's faces, assessing. "And milk, if you have it fresh." The servant bowed and disappeared. Alpha Warren stood awkwardly near the door, his earlier confidence completely shattered. I'd never seen him look so diminished, so afraid. Part of me felt a dark satisfaction at that. This was the man who'd approved my living conditions, who'd nodded along when my mate had rejected me publicly, who'd called me a burden to the pack during a council meeting I'd been forced to attend. "How many others?" Damon asked, his back still to Warren as he stared into the fire. "Your Majesty, I don't— How many other pack members are living in conditions like this?" Damon's voice had gone very quiet, very controlled. Somehow that was more terrifying than if he'd been shouting. "And don't lie to me. I'll know." Warren swallowed hard. 4 other families, 2 widows, 1 rejected Omega, 1 disabled warrior who can no longer fight. "Names." "Your Majesty." "Names. Now." Warren listed them, his voice shaking. I knew all of them. Sarah, the widow whose mate had died protecting the pack's borders, left with 3 children under 10. Old Martin, who'd lost his leg in a rogue attack and been cast aside like broken furniture. Cassandra, another rejected Omega who'd aged out of childbearing years and therefore lost all value in the pack's eyes. Rebecca, whose mate had died of sickness, leaving her alone with twin daughters. We were the forgotten ones, the inconvenient ones, the ones whose existence reminded the pack that their pretty hierarchy had sharp cutting edges that destroyed lives. "By tomorrow evening," Damon said, still not turning around, "all 5 families will be moved into proper housing within the central compound. They will receive the same provisions as every other pack member. Their children will attend pack school. The adults will be given appropriate work if they desire it, or support if they cannot work. Is that clear?" "Yes, Your Majesty, but the pack resources—" Now Damon did turn, and the look on his face made Warren take an actual step backward. "Are you telling me that a pack of 300 cannot support 5 families?" "No, Your Majesty. Of course we can. We will." "You will also submit a full accounting of pack finances and resource distribution to my administration within the week. I want to know exactly where everything goes. Every coin, every scrap of food, every supply distribution, everything." Warren's face had gone from pale to gray. "Yes, Your Majesty. Get out." Warren fled. The silence that followed his departure felt enormous, broken only by the crackling of the fire and Emma's soft breathing as she started to fall asleep against my chest. The warmth, the safety, the sheer exhaustion of 3 years of survival. It was all catching up with her. Damon stood motionless by the fire for a long moment, his shoulders tight with tension. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning," I answered honestly. There was no point in lying. "Some dried berries and half a potato." "And them?" "They ate yesterday evening, potato soup." "You gave them your portion." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "They're growing. They need it more." He turned to face me then, and the expression on his face was complex. Anger and sadness, and something that looked almost like recognition. "What's your name?" "Vera, Your Majesty, Vera," he repeated, tasting the word. "And your mate? The one who rejected you?" "His name was Jacob. He left the pack 2 years ago, headed south with his new mate." "Good," Damon said flatly. "If I'd found him here, I might have done something we'd all regret." The servant returned with a tray laden with food, and the smell alone made my stomach cramp painfully. Fresh bread, still warm. Soup that smelled of chicken and herbs and vegetables. Real tea, not the bitter bark infusions I'd been making do with. And for the children, a pitcher of milk that was almost certainly fresher than anything they'd ever tasted. "Eat," Damon said, gesturing to a small table near the fire. "Take your time. There's no rush." I wanted to fall on the food like a starving animal. Instead, I forced myself to move slowly, to maintain some dignity. I woke Emma gently and guided both children to the table, making sure they were settled before I took my own seat. The first bite of bread nearly made me cry. The second did. I turned my face away, ashamed of the tears that streamed down my cheeks. Ashamed of how broken I'd become that simple kindness could shatter me so completely. "Don't," Damon said quietly. He'd moved to stand near the window, giving us space, but not leaving entirely. "Don't apologize for feeling. Don't hide it." We ate in silence, the children's initial hunger giving way to sleepy contentment. Thomas's eyes kept drooping, jerking open, then drooping again. Emma had curled into my side, her small hand clutching my shirt. "There are rooms prepared upstairs," Damon said eventually. "Warm beds, clean clothes. You'll stay here tonight. Your Majesty, we couldn't possibly—" "You can. You will." His tone left no room for argument. "Tomorrow, we'll make more permanent arrangements. But tonight, you and your children will sleep somewhere warm and safe." A fresh wave of tears threatened. I swallowed them back. "Thank you." "Don't thank me for doing what should have been done 3 years ago." The bitterness in his voice was sharp. "Don't thank me for basic decency." Another servant appeared, this one a kind-faced woman who smiled at my children. "I'll show you to your rooms, dear, and I'll help the little ones get ready for bed if you'd like." I wanted to say no, wanted to keep them close, but they were falling asleep at the table. "Yes, thank you." Emma and Thomas were too tired to protest as the woman gently guided them toward the stairs. I started to follow, but Damon's voice stopped me. "Vera," a moment, my heart jumped into my throat. I turned back, keeping my eyes respectfully lowered. "Look at me." I did, though it took effort. His silver eyes caught mine, held them. "I need you to understand something," he said quietly. "What happened today wasn't charity. It wasn't kindness. It was justice. Long overdue. You and your children are pack members. That means you are under my protection, whether your local alpha remembered his duties or not." "I understand, Your Majesty. Do you?" He moved closer, and I had to fight the urge to back away. Not from fear of him exactly, but from the sheer intensity of his presence. "Because I don't think you do. I think you've spent 3 years being told you're worthless, that you're a burden, that you deserve to suffer. And I think you started to believe it." The accuracy of his words stole my breath. "You don't deserve this," he continued, his voice intense. "You never did. And anyone who told you otherwise was wrong." I didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to accept kindness I'd been trained to believe I hadn't earned. "Go," he said finally, stepping back. "Sleep. We'll talk more tomorrow." I fled before he could see me cry again, following the servant up the stairs to where my children waited. The room she led me to was larger than our entire cottage, with a bed so soft it felt like sleeping on clouds. Emma and Thomas were already tucked in, their faces peaceful in sleep. I lay down between them, pulling them close, and for the first time in 3 years, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, things might actually get better. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize, momentarily disoriented by the softness beneath me, the warmth surrounding me, the absence of cold wind whistling through gaps in the walls. Then memory crashed back, the courtyard. The Alpha King. The impossible kindness that still felt like a dream I might wake from at any moment. Emma and Thomas were still asleep. Their small bodies relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. No tension, no shivers, just the peaceful rest of children who felt safe. I allowed myself a moment to simply watch them, to memorize this image of them comfortable and warm. A soft knock at the door made me sit up quickly, smoothing my hair back. "Come in." The same kind-faced servant from last night entered carrying a tray. "Good morning, dear. I brought breakfast for you and the little ones. His Majesty requested you join him in his study once you're ready, but there's no rush. Let them sleep." She set the tray on a small table. More fresh bread, butter that smelled rich and creamy, eggs cooked with herbs, fruit that must have cost a fortune this far north in winter. My stomach growled audibly. "There are clothes in the wardrobe," the servant continued, gesturing to an ornate piece of furniture against the wall. "They should fit well enough. Take your time, dear. His Majesty has meetings all morning." She left before I could thank her, closing the door with a soft click. I ate standing up, unable to shake the feeling that this would all vanish if I relaxed too much. The food tasted impossibly good, each bite a reminder of everything I'd been doing without. When I'd taken the edge off my hunger, I explored the wardrobe. The clothes inside were simple but well made, far better quality than anything I'd owned even before my rejection. I chose a dark green dress that fit reasonably well, though it was slightly loose around my too thin frame. There were even proper undergarments, stockings without holes, boots that were only slightly too large. I caught sight of myself in a mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. My pale blonde hair, when clean and brushed with the supplies left on the dresser, fell in waves past my shoulders. My face, without the constant gray pallor of cold and hunger, showed the bone structure I'd inherited from my mother. I looked young still, despite everything, barely 24, though I felt ancient most days. Emma stirred as I was braiding my hair, her eyes opening slowly. "Mama." "I'm here, sweetheart." She sat up, looking around the room with wide eyes. "I thought I dreamed it." "No, baby. It's real." Thomas woke next, and both children fell on the breakfast with the enthusiasm of youth. I made them slow down, worried they'd make themselves sick. But the joy on their faces as they ate fresh fruit was worth any concern. By the time a different servant came to collect us, the sun was high in the sky. She led us through corridors I'd never dreamed of seeing, past tapestries and artwork that spoke of wealth beyond imagining. Other pack members passed us, their eyes widening when they recognized me, their whispers following in our wake. The study she brought us to was surprisingly modest compared to the rest of the building, lined with books, a large desk covered in papers, windows overlooking the forest beyond. Damon stood at one of those windows, his back to us, tension visible in every line of his body. "Your Majesty," the servant announced. "Vera and her children." He turned, and something in his expression shifted when he saw us. Softened, just slightly. "Thank you, Margaret. That will be all." When we were alone, he gestured to chairs near a fireplace that wasn't quite as massive as the one downstairs, but still radiated comfortable warmth. "Sit, please. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Thank you." "And the children?" "Very well." I hesitated, then added, "They haven't slept that peacefully in a long time." He nodded, as if this confirmed something he'd already known. "I've spent the morning making arrangements. The 5 families I mentioned yesterday are being moved today. Your cottage," he said the word with obvious distaste, "and the others like it will be torn down. No one should have to live like that. Your Majesty is very kind." "Stop calling me that." The words came out sharper than I think he intended, because he softened his tone immediately. "When we're private, I mean. My name is Damon." I couldn't imagine being so informal with someone of his status, but I nodded. He moved to his desk, picking up a folder. "I've reviewed the pack's financial records. Do you know how much money your former mate contributed to the pack coffers each month from his position? I shook my head. Enough to have supported you and your children comfortably for years. By law, half of that should have been redirected to you after the rejection. It wasn't. He set the folder down with carefully controlled violence. Alpha Warren claimed ignorance of that particular statute. I don't believe him. My hands clenched in my lap. What does that mean? It means you're owed 3 years of back support. It means Warren will be paying that debt from his personal funds, with interest. It means you'll have financial independence, enough to choose your own path forward. The implications of that stole my breath. Money of my own, choices, freedom. There's more, Damon continued, his eyes on my face as if gauging my reaction. I'm implementing new oversight for all packs in the Northern Territories. Regular audits, mandatory reporting on vulnerable pack members, consequences for alphas who fail in their duties. What happened to you? It can't happen again. Because of us? I asked quietly. You're changing policy because of what you saw yesterday? I'm changing policy because it should have been changed decades ago. His voice held that edge of controlled anger again. You were just the catalyst that finally made me act on something I've known was broken for too long. Emma had been playing quietly with Thomas near the fireplace, but now she approached Damon with the fearlessness of a child who'd decided someone was safe. Are you really a king? Damon's expression transformed again, that softening that made him look almost approachable. I am. Do you have a crown? I do, but I don't wear it very often. It's heavy and uncomfortable. Oh. She considered this seriously. Mama says crowns are just fancy hats anyway. I felt my face flush. Emma, I didn't... But Damon laughed, a real laugh that changed his entire face. Your mother is very wise. They are just fancy hats. Emma beamed at the praise, then returned to her brother, satisfied. She's brave, Damon observed quietly, to approach me like that. She doesn't understand hierarchy yet. Thomas is more cautious. He feels the weight of things more. Like his mother. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I said nothing. Damon was quiet for a moment, then... There's something else we need to discuss. My presence here, it's not just about Northern Pack oversight. There's unrest in the Southern Territories. Challenges to my authority. Packs refusing to acknowledge my rule. I need to make a statement. Show that my power extends everywhere. That I'm invested in all pack members, not just the strong ones. I understand your Maj, Damon. His name felt strange on my tongue. Too intimate, too presumptuous. I'm staying in this territory for the next month, he continued. Partly to oversee the reforms I'm implementing. Partly because... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Partly because running from one crisis to another. Never stopping, never connecting with the people I'm supposed to protect. It's made me into something I don't like very much. The honesty in that admission surprised me. I'm telling you this because I'd like you and your children to remain here, in the main compound, during that time. You'd have your own quarters, privacy, but also protection, security. His eyes met mine. And perhaps, if you're willing, I'd like to get to know you better. My heart did something complicated in my chest. Why? Why? He seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. I'm nobody, your Maj, Damon. A rejected Omega with 2 children and nothing to offer. Why would you want to know me better? He was quiet for so long I thought I'd offended him. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, intense. Yesterday, in that courtyard, you were freezing, starving, terrified. You had every reason to keep your head down, to stay invisible, to protect yourself above all else. But when I looked at you, do you know what I saw? I shook my head. Dignity. Courage. A mother who'd given everything to keep her children alive, who'd sacrificed her own comfort, her own food, her own warmth, and never complained, never begged, never broke. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming but not threatening. I've met alphas with every advantage who have less strength than you showed in that moment. So don't tell me you're nobody. Don't tell me you have nothing to offer. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Say you'll let me prove that kindness isn't a weakness, that compassion can coexist with power. Say you'll give me a chance to be better than the system that failed you. And after the month? I asked quietly. What happens then? That depends on what we both want. No obligations, no expectations. Just possibility. I looked at my children, playing peacefully by the fire, looked at this powerful man who'd upended his schedule and challenged pack law because he'd seen suffering and refused to ignore it. Looked at the future that had seemed so bleak yesterday and now held the faintest glimmer of hope. Okay, I whispered. We'll stay. The smile that crossed his face was small, but genuine. Thank you. A knock at the door interrupted us. Damon's expression shifted back to the controlled mask he wore in public. Enter. A guard stepped in, bowing. Your Majesty, the Southern delegation has arrived early. They're requesting an immediate audience. Damon's jaw tightened. Of course they are. Tell them I'll meet with them in 1 hour. The guard left, and Damon turned back to me with something like apology in his eyes. Duty calls, but Margaret will show you to your new quarters. A full suite. Much more comfortable than last night's room. Make yourselves at home. As we turned to leave, he added quietly, Vera? I meant what I said. Every word. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and followed Margaret out into a future I couldn't quite believe was real. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of adjustments that felt both wonderful and terrifying. Our new quarters were spacious, 3 connected rooms with soft beds, thick rugs, and windows that actually kept the cold out. Emma and Thomas adapted with the resilience of children, quickly making friends with other pack youth and attending school for the first time in their lives. Watching Thomas sound out words from a real book, seeing Emma draw pictures with actual colored pencils instead of charcoal on scraps, these small moments broke my heart and healed it simultaneously. But it was the evenings that changed everything. Damon made a habit of taking dinner with us several times a week, his official duties permitting. At first, I'd been stiff and formal, unable to relax around someone whose mere presence commanded submission from everyone around him. But he was patient, drawing out my children with questions about their day, listening with genuine interest to Emma's elaborate stories about the other students, to Thomas's careful observations about the books he was reading, and slowly, carefully, he drew me out too. Tell me about before, he'd asked one night, after the children had fallen asleep, and we sat by the fire in the common room of our suite. Before the rejection. What were you like? I'd stared into my tea, watching the steam rise. Happy, I think. Young. Naive. I believed the stories about mates being forever, about love conquering everything. I thought being chosen meant being cherished. And when he rejected you, I learned that being chosen just meant being useful. And when I stopped being useful, I shrugged. I stopped mattering. That's not true. His voice had been fierce. You matter. You've always mattered. I'd wanted to believe him. Almost did. Other conversations revealed pieces of him I hadn't expected. He told me about the weight of ruling, about making decisions that saved some lives while ending others, about the loneliness of power that isolated him from genuine connection. He spoke of watching packs prosper while others suffered, of laws that looked good on paper but failed in practice, of the constant pressure to be perfect, untouchable, more symbol than person. Do you have anyone? I'd asked one night, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Family? Friends? Someone you can be yourself with? He'd been quiet for a long moment. I have advisors, loyal guards, people who serve me well. But friends? Family? No. My parents died when I was young. I have a younger sister, but she lives in the Eastern Territories with her mate. We write, but it's not the same. He'd paused. I've learned that being king means being alone. That sounds awful. It is. His silver eyes had met mine. Or it was before. The implication in those words had made my breath catch. During the days while Damon attended to pack business and met with the increasingly hostile Southern delegation, I found myself drawn into the lives of the other families he'd rescued. Sarah, the widow, became a fast friend. A warm woman with a sharp wit, and 3 energetic children who adopted Emma and Thomas as surrogate siblings. Old Martin worked in the compound's library now. His wealth of knowledge finally valued instead of dismissed, Cassandra had taken charge of the kitchens, her organizational skills transforming chaos into efficiency. Rebecca and her twin daughters had started a small weaving business, creating beautiful textiles that were already drawing interest from neighboring packs. We were healing, all of us, learning to believe we deserved this second chance. But tension was building too. The Southern delegation grew more aggressive with each passing day. I heard whispers from servants about shouting matches behind closed doors, about challenges to Damon's authority, about accusations that he'd gone soft, that his focus on protecting the weak made him weak himself. One afternoon, as I walked through the compound's gardens with Emma and Thomas, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. "The king has lost his focus," a male voice said, dripping with contempt. "Wasting resources on rejects and cripples while real threats gather at our borders. He's always been too soft," another agreed. "All this talk of reform and protection. It makes us look vulnerable. The Southern packs smell blood in the water. Someone needs to remind him what real strength looks like." I hurried my children past before they could notice my tension, but the words stayed with me, poisonous and frightening. That night, Damon came to dinner distracted, the weight of the day visible in the tight set of his shoulders, the shadows under his eyes. Emma and Thomas sensed his mood and kept quiet, eating quickly before excusing themselves to play in their room. When we were alone, I made a decision. "What happened today?" He looked up, surprised. "Nothing you need to worry about, Damon." I used his name deliberately, the intimacy of it getting his attention. "I heard some of your pack members talking. About you being soft. About the Southern delegation." His expression darkened. "You shouldn't listen to gossip. Is it gossip if it's true?" Silence. "They're challenging you," I continued quietly. "Because of the reforms. Because you stopped to help people like me instead of ignoring us like everyone expected. Let them challenge." His voice was hard. "I won't apologize for doing what's right." "I know. I'm not asking you to." I hesitated, then pushed forward. "But I need you to understand something. If helping us puts you in danger, if it undermines your authority, don't." He stood abruptly, moving to the window. "Don't suggest I should have left you to freeze. Don't suggest that political expediency is more important than basic decency. I'm not. I'm just saying, I know what you're saying." He turned back to face me, and the intensity in his eyes stole my breath. "You're saying I should weigh your life against my political stability and choose stability. You're saying some lives matter less than others. You're saying exactly what every advisor in that council room has been saying for the past week. And what do you say? I say they're wrong. I say a kingdom built on the suffering of its weakest members isn't worth ruling. I say I'd rather face 1,000 challenges than become the kind of king who can walk past a freezing child and feel nothing." The conviction in his voice made my chest tight. "The Southern delegation leaves tomorrow," he continued. "They've made their position clear. Submit to their demands for autonomy and reduced oversight, or face potential conflict. I've made my position equally clear. I won't compromise on pack member welfare. Not for politics. Not for peace. Not for anything. They'll hate you for it. They already do." He moved closer, and I could see the exhaustion etched into his features. "But you know what I realized, Vera? I don't care. For years I've made decisions based on what would maintain stability, what would prevent conflict, what would keep everyone happy, and all it did was preserve a broken system that destroyed people like you. You can't save everyone. No. But I can try. I can be better than the indifference that almost killed you and your children." His hand reached out, hesitant, then cupped my face with surprising gentleness. "You made me remember why I wanted to be king in the first place. Not for power, not for status, to actually protect people, to actually make things better." I couldn't breathe. His touch was electric, his proximity overwhelming. "Damon, I know this is complicated," he said quietly. "I know I'm asking too much, moving too fast. You're still healing, still learning to trust again, but I need you to know, you're not a political inconvenience. You're not a weakness. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and being near you makes me want to be worthy of that strength." Tears spilled over before I could stop them. "I'm not strong. I'm broken and scared, and I don't know how to be anything else. You're alive. You kept your children alive. You maintained your dignity and your compassion, even when the world gave you every reason to become bitter and cruel. If that's not strength, I don't know what is." His thumb brushed away my tears, and the tenderness of the gesture nearly undid me completely. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. "Nothing you're not ready to give. Your company. Your trust if I can earn it. Time to prove that not everyone will hurt you. And if the Southern Pacts make good on their threats, if choosing to help us really does lead to conflict, then I'll face it. And I'll win. Because I refuse to live in a world where kindness is punished and cruelty is rewarded. His silver eyes held mine, but I won't lie and say there's no risk. I won't pretend this is easy or safe. If you want to leave, take your children somewhere quieter, away from all this political mess. I'll understand. I'll make sure you're taken care of, wherever you go. It would be the smart choice, the safe choice. Take the money he'd secured for us, find a small pack somewhere peaceful, raise my children away from power struggles and dangerous politics. But as I looked at him, this powerful, lonely man who'd stopped his entire schedule because he'd seen suffering and refused to ignore it, I realized I didn't want safe. I wanted this. Whatever this was becoming between us. I'm staying, I said. Relief flooded his features. You're sure? I'm terrified, but I'm staying. He smiled then, soft and genuine, and pulled me into an embrace that felt like coming home. I let myself sink into his warmth, his strength, his presence. Let myself believe, just for a moment, that maybe broken things could be healed, that maybe I deserved this second chance at happiness. Outside, wind howled against the windows, carrying the scent of snow and the promise of storms to come. But here, in this moment, I felt safe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Southern delegation would leave with threats barely veiled as diplomacy. Political tensions would continue to build. My presence in Damon's life would be scrutinized, criticized, used as ammunition by his enemies. But tonight, I let myself have this. Have him. Have hope. The storm broke 3 days after the Southern delegation departed. I was in the library with Thomas, helping him practice his reading, when the first sounds of chaos reached us. Shouting, running footsteps, the clash of metal that could only mean one thing. My son's eyes went wide with fear, and I pulled him close, my heart hammering against my ribs. Sarah burst through the door, her face pale. Vera, you need to get to the secure rooms. Now. There's been an attack. What kind of attack? Rogues. A large group, coordinated. They breached the eastern perimeter. She grabbed Thomas's hand, already pulling us toward the door. The king's orders. All non-combatants to the reinforced chambers beneath the main hall. The next hours passed in a blur of fear and waiting. The secure chambers were crowded with women, children, elderly pack members. Everyone who couldn't fight huddled together in the semi-darkness, listening to muffled sounds of battle above. Emma clung to me on one side, Thomas on the other, both trembling despite my attempts to comfort them. It's the Southern Pacts, I heard someone whisper. They hired the rogues, trying to prove the king can't even protect his own territory. I heard they're specifically targeting the reform families, trying to make a point. Cold fear washed over me. This was because of us, because Damon had chosen to help us, to change things, to stand up to those who wanted the old ways maintained. The waiting was torture. Every sound above made my imagination conjure terrible possibilities. Damon injured. Damon overwhelmed by numbers. Damon paying the price for his kindness with his life. Hours passed. Emma and Thomas eventually fell into restless sleep against my shoulders, exhausted by fear. I couldn't sleep, couldn't even close my eyes, just sat there in the darkness, praying to whatever gods might listen that he would be okay, that this wouldn't end with more loss, more proof that caring about others only led to pain. Finally, as dawn light began filtering through the high windows, the all-clear signal came. The heavy doors opened, and guards began directing people back to their quarters. I carried Emma, holding Thomas's hand, my body numb with exhaustion and lingering terror. Margaret found me in the corridor. His Majesty wants to see you, in his private quarters. Is he hurt? Some injuries, but he'll recover. He's insisting on seeing you before he'll let the healers finish their work. I settled my children with Sarah, promising I'd return soon, and followed Margaret through corridors that showed signs of the night's violence. Scorch marks on walls, broken furniture, bloodstains being scrubbed away by servants. My stomach churned. Damon's private quarters were in chaos. Healers moved around with supplies, guards gave reports in low voices, and in the center of it all sat Damon, shirtless, blood streaking his torso from a long cut across his ribs. His face was bruised, his knuckles split and raw, but his eyes were alert, fierce, alive. Those eyes found me the moment I entered, and something in his expression shifted, softened with relief. Out, he ordered the room at large. Everyone out. Now, the healers protested, but one look at his face silenced them. Within moments, we were alone. You're hurt, I said, my voice shaking. I'm fine. You're bleeding. I've had worse. He stood, wincing slightly, and moved toward me. Are you okay? The children? We're fine. Scared, but fine. I couldn't stop staring at the cut on his ribs, the bruises darkening his skin. What happened? Exactly what you warned me about. The Southern Pack sent a message. 40 rogues, well-armed, specifically targeting the areas where the reform families were housed. His jaw clenched. They wanted to prove I couldn't protect the people I'd claimed to care about. Wanted to show that my reforms made us vulnerable. Did anyone? No deaths, some injuries, but we got everyone to safety in time. The rogues are either captured or fled. He reached out, his hand cupping my face with the same gentleness he'd shown before, despite the violence still fresh on his skin. But it was close, Vera. Too close. I turned my face into his palm, breathing him in, blood and sweat and that wild scent that was uniquely his. This is my fault. No. The word was sharp, absolute. This is the fault of cowards who'd rather maintain a broken system than accept change. This is the fault of packs who see compassion as weakness and cruelty as strength. But if you hadn't helped us, then I would have been a different kind of monster. The kind who can walk past suffering and feel nothing. The kind who values political stability over actual lives. His other hand came up to frame my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. I won't apologize for choosing you. For choosing all of you, even if it means facing threats. Even if it means conflict. Some things are worth fighting for. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. Too late. I'm already hurt. But he wasn't talking about the physical wounds, and we both knew it. The air between us felt charged, heavy with everything we hadn't said. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I could feel myself trembling. Not from fear this time, but from want. From the realization that somewhere in these past weeks, he'd become essential to me, that the thought of losing him hurt worse than any rejection I'd suffered before. Vera, he said quietly, his voice rough. I need you to understand something. What I feel for you, it's not gratitude for making me a better king. It's not some savior complex, it's... He paused, seeming to search for words. You make me feel human again, not just a symbol or a weapon or a political entity, just a man who wants to be worthy of an extraordinary woman. I'm not extraordinary. You are to me. He leaned closer, his forehead resting against mine. You're everything I didn't know I was missing. And I know it's too soon. I know you're still healing. I know I should be patient, but I almost died tonight thinking I might never get to tell you how much you mean to me. Tears streamed down my face. I'm so scared. I know. I'm scared of losing this, of losing you, of believing in something good, only to have it ripped away again. I know. His voice was achingly gentle, but I'm not him, Vera. I'm not Jacob. I won't reject you. I won't abandon you. I won't ever make you feel like you're not enough. Promise me, I whispered. Promise me you won't die doing something heroic and stupid because you think you have to prove something. A small smile tugged at his lips, despite the gravity of the moment. I promise to try very hard not to die at all. That's not funny. It's a little funny. I hit his shoulder, gently, mindful of his injuries, and he caught my hand, bringing it to his lips. The kiss he pressed to my palm sent electricity racing through my entire body. Let me court you properly, he said against my skin. Let me show you what it means to be cherished, not just chosen. Let me prove that love can be gentle and strong at the same time. Yes, I breathed, because what else could I say? This man had turned my world upside down, had shown me that kindness wasn't weakness, that I deserved more than mere survival. Yes. He kissed me then, soft and careful, a promise more than a demand. His lips were gentle against mine, tasting of blood and hope and new beginnings. I kissed him back, pouring 3 years of loneliness and fear and desperate hope into the contact, letting myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I could have this. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard. His smile was radiant despite the bruises. "The healers are going to be furious I made them wait," he said. "Then let them in before you bleed to death and break your promise." He laughed. That real, genuine laugh I'd only heard a handful of times, and called for the healers. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change. The southern packs, faced with undeniable evidence of their involvement in the rogue attack, were forced to submit to Damon's authority or face severe consequences. Most chose submission, though their resentment simmered beneath the surface. A few smaller packs chose to leave the kingdom entirely, preferring exile to reform. Damon let them go. "I won't force anyone to stay who doesn't want to be here," he told me one evening as we walked through the gardens, my hand tucked into his arm. "But I also won't compromise on protecting pack members. If they can't accept that basic standard, they're better off elsewhere." His reforms spread through the northern territories like wildfire. Other alphas, seeing the consequences of Warren's failures, rushed to ensure their own vulnerable pack members were cared for. Housing was built, resources redistributed, support systems established. It wasn't perfect. Change never was. But it was progress. Alpha Warren himself was removed from his position, replaced by a younger alpha named Marcus, who'd been vocal in supporting the reforms. Warren was given a choice: accept a reduced role within the pack and work to make amends, or leave. He chose to stay, his pride broken, but perhaps his conscience finally awakening. As for us, the 5 families who'd been abandoned, we became something unexpected. Symbols. Proof that Damon's reforms weren't just political posturing, but genuine change. Sarah's children thrived in school, their mother's voice now heard in pack councils. Old Martin's library became a center of learning that drew students from neighboring packs. Cassandra's kitchen fed not just pack members, but travelers and those in need. Rebecca's textiles gained fame, her business growing beyond anything she'd imagined. And my children bloomed like flowers finally given sunlight. Thomas discovered a gift for languages, his careful mind soaking up knowledge with startling speed. Emma's natural warmth and leadership had other children gravitating toward her, her confidence growing daily. They'd stopped flinching at sudden movements, stopped hoarding food, stopped expecting cruelty around every corner. They'd started believing they deserved good things, as had I. Damon courted me with a patience and gentleness that shattered every defense I'd built around my heart. Not with expensive gifts or grand gestures, but with small moments of tenderness. Reading to my children when they couldn't sleep. Teaching Thomas strategy games that challenged his quick mind. Braiding Emma's hair when my hands were full. Listening to my fears without judgment. Sharing his own vulnerabilities without shame. He made me laugh, made me feel beautiful, made me believe that my past didn't define my future. 6 months after that first night in the courtyard, he asked me to marry him. We were alone in the gardens, the spring air warm and sweet with blooming flowers. He'd orchestrated nothing elaborate, no public spectacle, just the 2 of us beneath the stars. His hands holding mine, his silver eyes reflecting moonlight. "I know this is fast," he said quietly. "I know you might need more time. But I've waited my whole life to feel like this, and I don't want to waste another moment pretending I'm not completely, irrevocably in love with you." My breath caught. "You love me? How could I not? You're brave and kind and strong in ways I'm still learning to understand. You've taught me that true power isn't about dominance. It's about lifting others up. That real strength is choosing compassion even when the world punishes you for it." His thumb brushed across my knuckles. "You've made me a better king, but more than that, you've made me a better man. I love you too," I whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "So much it scares me. Then be scared with me. We'll figure it out together." He smiled, that soft expression reserved only for private moments. "Marry me, Vera. Not because you need my protection or my resources, not because it's practical or expected. Marry me because you want to build a life together, because you believe in what we could be." "Yes," I said through tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." The kiss we shared tasted of joy and promise, and futures we'd both thought impossible. The wedding took place 2 months later, in the height of summer when the northern territories were briefly warm and green. It wasn't the grand political affair many expected. Instead, it was intimate, meaningful. Pack members who'd become friends, the families we'd saved together, children laughing and playing without fear. Emma served as flower girl, her confidence shining as she scattered petals down the aisle. Thomas stood proud beside Damon, having been asked to hold the rings, a responsibility he took with adorable seriousness. I wore a simple dress of cream and gold, my pale blonde hair woven with summer flowers. No crown, no elaborate jewelry. Just me, walking toward a future I'd never dared dream of. Damon waited at the altar in formal attire that somehow made him look both more regal and more human. When I reached him, when his hands took mine, the look in his eyes said everything words couldn't. The ceremony was traditional, the vows ancient, but when we spoke them, they felt new, weighted with everything we'd survived to reach this moment. "I take you as my mate," Damon said, his voice strong and clear. "My equal, my partner, my heart. I promise to cherish you, to protect you, to never make you feel less than the extraordinary woman you are. I promise to be worthy of your trust, your love, your strength." My own vows came through tears. "I take you as my mate, my love, my home. I promise to stand beside you, to support your vision of a better world, to remind you that kindness is not weakness. I promise to trust you with my heart, even though it's been broken before. I promise to build a future with you based on compassion, courage, and love." When we kissed, sealing our bond, the pack erupted in cheers, but I barely heard them. All I could feel was Damon's arms around me, his heart beating against mine, the overwhelming rightness of this moment. The celebration lasted well into the night. There was food and music and dancing, laughter echoing through the compound. I danced with my children, with Sarah and the other families, with Damon's sister who'd traveled from the Eastern Territories and immediately claimed me as family. But my favorite moment came late in the evening, when Damon and I slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking the forest. The moon was full, painting everything in silver light. "Happy?" he asked, pulling me close. "Terrified," I admitted, "but yes. So happy I don't know what to do with it all. Get used to it. I plan on making you this happy for the rest of our lives," I laughed, tucking my head against his chest. "That's a bold promise." "I'm a bold man." His hand stroked through my hair, gentle and possessive at once. "Thank you." "For what?" "For taking a chance on me, for trusting me despite everything you'd been through, for showing me what really matters." He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. "You saved me, Vera. Just as much as I saved you. We saved each other," I corrected softly. "Yes, we did." Years later, when people asked how a rejected Omega with nothing became queen to the most powerful Alpha in the kingdom, I would tell them the truth. I didn't become queen by being perfect or powerful or special. I became queen by surviving, by maintaining my compassion even when the world was cruel, by raising my children with love despite having nothing material to give them, by being brave enough to accept kindness when it was offered, even though I'd learned to expect only pain. And I became queen by loving a man who understood that true strength wasn't about dominance or control. It was about choosing to care, to protect, to lift others up, even when it cost him politically. Together, we transformed the kingdom. Not overnight, not perfectly, but steadily. Laws were changed, vulnerable pack members protected, accountability established. The Northern Territories became known not for harshness and survival of the fittest, but for innovation in pack care, for communities that valued all their members. Emma grew into a confident young woman who eventually became an advocate for orphaned children, using her own experience to help others. Thomas became a scholar and advisor, his quick mind helping shape policies that protected the vulnerable while maintaining pack strength. Sarah's children thrived. Old Martin trained a new generation of librarians. Cassandra's kitchen became legendary. Rebecca's textiles were sought after across all territories. The 5 families that had been forgotten became the foundation of a better system. And Damon and I? We built a life based on mutual respect, genuine partnership, and love that grew deeper with each passing year. We had our challenges. Ruling was never easy, and there were always those who resented change. But we faced them together, never forgetting where we'd started, never taking for granted the miracle of finding each other. On cold winter nights, when snow fell thick and heavy, I would sometimes stand at the window and remember that courtyard, that moment of desperation, that impossible kindness. And I would feel Damon's arms come around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder, his warmth solid and real. "What are you thinking about?" he'd ask. "How far we've come, how different everything is. Regrets? Never." I'd turn in his arms, meeting those silver eyes that still made my breath catch. Not a single one. And it was true. Every hardship, every moment of suffering, every tear I'd cried, it had all led me here, to him, to this life, to a love I'd never imagined possible. The poor Omega and her children who'd stood shivering in that courtyard were gone, transformed by compassion into something stronger, something whole. Not because we'd been saved, but because we'd been seen, valued, loved, and that I learned made all the difference.